welcome to my birthing video. I can't believe that it's already been 2 weeks since I gave birth, that little Myra came into our family, and it just feels so surreal and like a dream. I still can't believe that I'm a mother, that I actually have a baby now, but obviously she's really tiny, so she pretty much just sleeps, eats, poops, and that's it on repeat. So that's kind of my life at the moment as well. I've just had some time. I've just fed her and given her to my mum to look after, so I thought I'll just quickly do this video because it's still fresh in my mind, and I really just want to share my birthing story with all of you. When I was pregnant and I wanted to prepare myself for birth, I watched a lot of birthing videos of other YouTubers and Instagrammers, and I found it really helpful just to prepare myself with the realities, and everyone goes through different experiences, so it's just good to know stories of other people, and these are real life stories. So I wanted to do my bit and just share my story with all of you. Hopefully you'll find it helpful as well. I'll just give a little bit of a warning. This is going to be a really long video because there's just so many details that I wanted to share, and I think the more you share the better, because a lot of the times you hear rosy stories about birth and deliveries, or you hear really horror stories, and so I just wanted to capture my entire experience from start to finish. So Myra is actually 2 weeks old now, but she came in quite early. She came at 36 weeks, and you're not classed full-term until 37 weeks, which means although she only came like 3 days early before she was going to be 37 weeks, she still is classed as a slightly premature baby, and hence why she's a really tiny baby. So if you remember my baby haul video, I was talking about tiny baby clothes and how for Indian parents, even those clothes can, well, the newborn clothes can be big on them. That's why you buy tiny baby clothes. Well, for Myra, even the tiny baby clothes were actually loose on her when we first put them on her. So you can imagine she's a really tiny baby. But thankfully, she's been feeding really well and been putting on a lot of weight slowly. So she's looking quite she's looking like she's definitely on the, you know, the growth curve as she should be. So yeah, her due date is actually in Feb, and it's still about 2 weeks away, which is crazy. So she's not even come to her due date yet, and if she were not born, she would have been about 38 weeks I would have been 38 weeks pregnant at the moment. So she is a tiny baby. She did come early, and I want to share what exactly happened and all the details of how she came about. So it's really funny. It was Friday when things started to happen, and we always used to joke, like my mum and I, we always just guess whether she would come early or she would come late, and we all thought that she would come early because of just how active she was, and we just thought she's not going to stay in for that long, she will probably come early. But in my head I was like, yeah, but at least she'll wait until 37 weeks and she might come early, but you know, it could be 38 weeks or 39 weeks. And actually at the hospital everyone had told me that first time babies fashionably come late, so they can come 41 weeks or at 42 weeks, and I was like, oh my god, that's going to be such a long wait, because I wanted a Jan baby. So yeah, I guess someone listened to me and she decided that she didn't want to wait that long, and she came early. So it was a very typical Friday when things happened, and because I'd had a really fit pregnancy, I, you know, went about doing all my normal chores, and that week I guess a couple of changes had taken place. So one of the changes was that I was starting to feel a bit more tired in the afternoons, and so I decided that day to just take a nap. And when I woke up, I was feeling much better, so I just did my normal prenatal yoga routine. And the other change that had happened that week was that I had had increased discharge down the bottom, which is all normal. And also the other change was that I had started to feel slight, like very light period-like cramps, just, you know, in my lower belly. And again, these are considered very normal late in your pregnancy, so obviously I just shrugged them off and didn't make a big deal out of it. I was like, yeah, my body's just preparing for birth. And yeah, so I did my yoga session, and then Pratik came back from work. We decided we'll just go out for dinner because neither of us could be bothered cooking that day. So we went out, had a lovely meal, came home. We video called my parents and had a really long chat with them. Again, joked about when the baby would come, not knowing that things would happen that very night. And so we had a really long, like 1 hour call maybe with them. After that call, Pratik decided to run me a foot spa, and he gave me a lovely foot massage. And then we, you know, just headed to bed. So it was probably around 10:30 by that time, by the time I got into bed. Again, so far everything was normal. So I got into bed, and then I felt those slight period like cramps again. So I mentioned it to Pratik, saying, you know, these days I've started to feel these like cramps. I think my body's just prepping for birth. I just wanted to keep him up to date with everything that was going on, because who knows when, you know, we might have to go to the hospital. So I just wanted him to know every little detail that was happening. So I just mentioned that to him, and then we, you know, just wanted to go to sleep. And then the pain came again, and I was like, oh, that's funny, because the pain wasn't that frequent before, and now I felt it twice in like half an hour. So I mentioned it to him again, and he's like, yeah, and, you know, just wanting to sleep, obviously. And the pain came again. So it was basically like period-like cramps that kept coming. So it's like, oh, this feels weird. And after maybe about 5-6 times of me saying that, Pratik pulled out his phone. He had very recently actually downloaded this app that lets you time your contractions. So he's like, maybe it's practice contractions, because we'd read that before you actually go into labor, your body does these practice contractions. And also we weren't sure if they were Braxton Hicks, which is again a practice contraction, because every appointment in that month, my midwife had asked me if I'd been having practice Braxton Hicks, and I hadn't actually felt anything. So I used to be like, I don't know, maybe I am, I just can't tell. So they're like, yeah, some people cannot tell if they're getting it, so maybe you're one of them. And I said, yeah, maybe. So at that point, when these cramps started hitting me, I was like, maybe that's Braxton Hicks. Anyway, so Pratik pulled out his app and he started timing it. And I would describe these sensations as waves. So every now and again there would be a wave. There was no pattern at that point. They would come, I can't remember the timings, but maybe 1 in 5 minutes, or maybe like 2 in 5 minutes, and they would last anywhere between 10 seconds, sometimes 20 seconds, sometimes 40 seconds. So there was really no pattern at that point, but they were coming. And so it was slowly and slowly the pain was increasing. So initially I would say I just, you know, just notice it and be like, oh yeah, I just had one. Slowly and slowly the pain started increasing, and I wouldn't be able to just calmly take it anymore. I'd be like grunting because it was starting to hurt. And so Pratik's like, maybe this is early labor. I was like, no, it can't be early labor, it's just 36 weeks. Maybe it's just practice labor or something. Just try to shrug it off at that point. But they kept coming, and soon a pattern started to form where every 5 minutes I would have to do 3 contractions lasting about 30 seconds to 40 seconds. So we're like, maybe we should call the hospital and just find out what is this. And so we called the hospital and were told that sounds like early contractions, just keep monitoring it, and if they increase in frequency, let us know. So at this point it was like 11:30, 12, and there was no way I could sleep through the contractions, and they kept increasing in pain. So we got the birthing ball out, the gym ball, and I sat on it, and that kind of helped with the contractions. But again, the pain was not subsiding. So I called my mom, and my mom was basically on speed dial at that time, because she knew that things could happen anytime. She had booked a flexible ticket so that if in case I went into labor, she'd immediately come on a plane to Manchester to help with the birth and delivery. So we notified her and we just let her know, look, the contractions seem to have started. Can you look for a ticket for this morning? So my mum and dad were up in Belgium. Pratik and I were obviously up here in Manchester. And yeah, the pains kept coming in, and we called the hospital I think twice more, and again were told that there was no point going into the hospital because you have to be 4 centimeters dilated to actually go in for a delivery. Otherwise it's obviously convenient to just stay home in the comfort of your, you know, familiar surroundings rather than be in a hospital. So even I didn't want to go to the hospital. And because the pains had just started, there was no way I was at 4 centimeters dilation already. So we kind of just had to go through that experience at home. The hospital suggested that I just run a bath, and I tried to lie down and sleep through it. There was no way I could sleep through it at that time. We did run a bath at around 3 o'clock in the morning, and that's when finally we decided that mom needs to come, because the pains were increasing a lot and I was not able to, I guess, talk through them anymore. Like I had to practice a lot of breathing, and at this point my hypnobirthing techniques actually came in quite helpful, even though I had not spent hours practicing them. But just having gone through that reading once or twice and having practiced it a couple of times, I was able to apply that breathing technique while these contractions are coming, and that definitely helps. So if you haven't looked into hypnobirthing, just make sure you at least have read once, because if not the visualizations or anything else, the breathing will surely help you. So I started doing these breathing techniques and was able to manage the pain at that point. Finally called the hospital again because the pains were not decreasing. The frequency was definitely becoming more and more, and this time the hospital said that because the contractions were of certain frequency, and because I was under 37 weeks, I was kind of on a higher risk category slightly, so they said, why don't you just come in? At this point it was like 4 o'clock, or yeah, around 4ish in the morning, and we'd been up all night, so you can imagine we were pretty exhausted. I was exhausted having gone through those pains and not having had any sleep. So we decided, let's just go to the hospital, let's just get this checked. They will just probably send us back home. That was our thinking. And I wasn't even going to take the hospital bags with us, but I was like, oh, maybe on second thoughts we should just, you know, pop them in the car. There's no harm in doing that. And luckily, just 2 days before that, we had finalized our hospital bags, one for myself, one for the baby. And I had asked Pratik to repack both the hospital bags because, and this is a really good tip by the way, because when you are in that state where you're in labor and you are in pain, and you know, there's no way you can communicate properly, and you can't really reach out into the back for things you want. So your partner, you're fully dependent on your partner basically. So your partner needs to know what you kept there, what it's for, and when it's needed. So that was really good. Pratik knew exactly what was in the bags and he popped them in the car, and then we went. It's so funny, our car is parked literally 10 steps away from the house, and in that time between me walking from the house to the car, I managed to have 2 contractions. I'm just so glad that it was in the middle of the night, like 4 o'clock in the morning. The roads were empty because I was having contractions in the car, and luckily there was no traffic, the lights were green. Pratik drove very smoothly, and in 5 minutes we were at the hospital. Even then, when he was parking, I got out and managed to have a contraction right there. I had to literally go down on all my fours in front of the hospital. So it was, you know, getting to a state where I could not properly manage the pain just through my breathing. Got to the hospital door, and guess what? We had to buzz to be let in because they were out of hours closed. So literally I was standing there at the hospital gates in pain. Pratik was buzzing at the gate, and finally someone let us in, and we hobbled, well, I hobbled my way through to where I was supposed to be going. So there were 2 midwives there, and they're like, oh, Ayushina, we've been waiting for you, because I'd obviously called them so many times that night that they were expecting me. And one look at me and the midwife said, yeah, you know what, you're probably gonna have your baby today. So that was that. They examined me at that point, and let me tell you, the examination for how dilated you are hurts. It really, really hurts. I was not prepared for that, and I screamed in agony. I don't know what they did down there, but it hurt a lot. And after all of that, they told me I was 1 centimeter dilated. So you can imagine my disappointment at finding out that I was only 1 centimeter dilated. I was like, oh great, I have to wait now for 4 centimeters and then finally for 10 centimeters before the baby can come out. So in my head at that time, I was obviously still overcoming that pain I had just experienced from the examination, and in my head I was thinking, oh, they'll probably just send me home now and I'll have to go through this entire labor experience for like a day or something before I finally reach 10 centimeter dilation and stuff. And then the doctor said to me, you can't go home anymore because you're under 37 weeks, so we have to keep you in the hospital, keep you under surveillance, and we can't let you labor at home. And I was like, what, are you kidding? So I have to stay here the whole time? And she's like, yes. The other disappointment was that I had planned a natural birth at the birthing center in the hospital, which is midwife led. There are no doctors involved unless it's an emergency, and it's a really nice room, very like moody, soft lighting. There's no beds or anything. Well, there's like a soft bed on the side, but mainly it's just got that birthing pool in which you can get in and just relax and have a really nice calm birth. That's what I had visualized and that's what I had wanted. But because I was under 37 weeks and I was slightly gonna have a premature baby, I had to go to the delivery suite, no longer a birthing center. So the delivery suite is where I guess doctors can come in, and although you still have midwives there, but it's more I guess equipped for medical interventions should you need it. So at that point I was admitted and could no longer go home, so you bet we were glad to have brought the hospital bags with us. So I think I forgot to mention was that when we did leave for the hospital, I guess at that point I was still thinking logically, because I made sure that we both had breakfast before we left in case we were kept in the hospital for a while. So we both sat there and had our breakfast, and I was like having my painful contractions and still eating. I'm so glad we did that though, because we ended up being admitted. And then the other thing I did was made sure that the dishes were all in the dishwasher, and I turned it on before we left because I did not want to come back to a messy kitchen. Again, very glad I did that, but it's just funny now when I think about those things that I did before I was leaving to have a baby. Anyway, so after all that examination and stuff, they admitted me and I was sent to the antenatal ward, which is literally one bed and like a curtained off area, and that's it. You just have to stay there and labor and reach 4 centimeters before you get moved to the delivery suite. That I would say I found very difficult because you're confined to that space, and I would have much preferred staying at home and laboring, but in my situation I couldn't do that. And my pain was increasing and increasing, and every time there was a contraction I would literally hold Pratik's hands so tightly. I gave him so many cuts and bruises and scratches because I was trying to, I guess, somehow disperse the pain off, and that was the only way I could do that. I would literally squeeze his hands every time there was a contraction and practice my breathing technique. So that kind of worked till about 11ish. My mum arrived also. She managed to find a ticket for that same day, and by 11 o'clock she came straight to the hospital and she was with me. So I had Pratik, who was my birthing partner, who knew everything about the medical system and had been to all my appointments and was fully on the same page as me. And then I had my mum, who was there for me from a very emotional side of things, because when you're going through such things you kind of want your mum to be there. I don't know, I just wanted someone very maternal to be there. Obviously that's going to be my mum, so yeah, I felt really comfortable with those two around me. And at that point my pain hit another level, and so I had another examination pretty much when my mum came, and I was 2 centimeters dilated only. And here I'm thinking, how am I going to reach 4 centimeters and when am I going to have this baby? I still had obviously a couple of centimeters still to dilate, and the pain really got bad. So I asked for some painkiller options. I was offered ibuprofen and paracetamol, which is, I would say, a very temporary solution, very short-lasting solution, and soon I was asking for something else. I was then offered codeine, which was again a tablet form of a medicine. It didn't do anything. I didn't feel the medicine at all. My pains did not go at all. And at this point I was like actually breathing quite heavily, and you could tell I was in pain. Like anyone in that ward would have known that I was laboring. So that happened. Then they offered me, that I should run a bath and get into the water, which I obliged to. But there was no way I could walk myself, so Pratik literally had to carry me there and undress me and put me in the bath. I would say the water definitely helps in contractions. It helps, but it doesn't take your pain away completely, obviously. So I'm there in the water and I'm laboring in the water, and Pratik's there. And the one thing we had read was that oxytocin is really good during, you know, all of this. So the more oxytocin you can develop and form in your body, the better. So there's Pratik like whispering sweet nothings into my ears and, you know, giving me soft kisses and stroking me and doing all of these things, which I think really helped. At that point I felt so calm. But again, when the contraction would hit, I'd be like, oh shit. So it got really painful. I finally got out of the bath, and literally the contractions were getting so much more frequent that I would not have time to rest between them. So I had not slept. By this time it had been 12 hours since I had been in contractions. got out of the bath and asked them, okay, I need something else now. What other painkiller options have I got? So this time they offered me something called diamorphine, which was an injection. It was given to me in my thighs, and that helped. I think that was the first time that I felt woozy, and yeah, it just took my pain away. Not completely, but just took that edge away, I would say. At this point, it was roughly 3 p.m. So I was due another examination to check my dilation. So painful because I had screamed like anything the last time they did my examination. This time when they did it, they offered me gas and air. So I had diamorphine and I had gas and air. So I was completely gone. But the pain was still so bad when they examined me that I still managed to scream. Anyway, I was 4 centimeters dilated at that time. At this point, they were like, yep, you're ready for the delivery suite now. I had not eaten much by then because of the pain. I was just not able to take much food. So I'd had a few like liquids like juices and water and stuff, but that was it. So I was hungry, I was exhausted, I hadn't slept, and I was in pain. So I was then wheeled into the delivery suite, which did not have a birthing pool because I could not get into one in under 37 weeks. There was a bed and it was still a really nice room, but I don't remember much because things went up to the next level from then on. Oh my god. So I went into the delivery suite at 3 p.m. and I do remember the fact that they gave me a birthing ball to sit on, but at that point nothing was helping. The diamorphine had started to wear off already. The pain was terrible. I was getting this terrible back pain as if my lower back was on fire, and I wouldn't mind if that back pain wasn't there and I was getting those cramps, but that back pain was killing me. It was terrible. I thought I was gonna die. It was so bad, that pain. But I was told that it was nothing to do with the cramps. It was actually the position of the baby, and that the baby was probably pressing against a nerve, which was causing that back pain. So yeah, that was terrible. The back pain was really, really bad. And I remember the birthing ball didn't do anything to help. So I got off the birthing ball and I got on the bed, and after that I don't remember much. They say from 1 centimeter to 4 centimeter is your early labor, and then from 4 centimeter to 10 centimeter is your active labor. I was 4 centimeters at 3 p.m. and the baby came at 6 p.m. So I was only in active labor for 3 hours, which a lot of nurses told me is really, really good. It's a very short amount of time actually, but in my mind I was in labor since 11 p.m. the night before, so in my head I had been in labor for like 18 hours or something like that. So a very long time, right? I got onto the bed, and like I said, everything is from then on a blur, and I literally had to talk to Pratik and talk to Mum and go through my hospital notes to kind of figure out what exactly happened. I sort of remember what happened, but probably not all the details. But essentially I had asked for a painkiller at that point as well because the pain was ridiculous, but I could not have any more diamorphine. Apparently you can only have a certain amount in a certain number of hours, and it was too soon to be given some. The pain was literally, guys, it was so bad. And then they offered me, well, they asked me if I wanted epidural. I was hesitant because I was told that I had to be still for 20 minutes for them to make sure the pipe and stuff goes in, and I was not being still. And from the way I remember it, I was moving a lot because I was in so much pain. I was literally holding Pratik's hands and, you know, doing all of this and tossing and turning and going crazy basically from all the pain. So in my head I was like, how the hell am I gonna stay still for 20 minutes for this epidural thing to come? And Pratik was getting worried because he was watching me in agony, and he was like, I think you need epidural. And I'm like, I can't stay still. And he's like, I'm sure you can. So we're having this debate between us. I am in pain, I'm contracting and managing to have these small conversations. The epidural team comes in and they're obliged to explain everything to you and ask you for your permission. and here's someone trying to ask me what to do. What do I want to do? And here's Pratik suggesting I should get it done. I'm in pain. My mind can't process half these things happening around me, and I'm like, I don't know. And at some point I was like, I can't do this anymore. It's just too painful, and let's just get a C-section done. And the midwife who was helping me, bless her, she's like, Sheena, you're gonna have a natural birth. You can't have a C-section. You're just gonna do it naturally and you'll be fine. Bless her. Actually bless all the staff. I mean, this was a public hospital, NHS, and the service was excellent. The midwives were amazing. Just the fact that they were so patient and helped with everything so diligently, I mean, just amazing. The service was really, really good. So yeah, so this epidural person is talking to me and I can't make up my mind, and in all of that blurred moments, suddenly the midwife checks me and says I am 10 centimeters dilated. So it must have been around 5:30 or somewhere around then when this happened. So from, I would say, around 3ish to 5:30, it's about 2.5 hours, I had dilated to 10 centimeters, and everything is a blur in that period of time because I was in so much pain. Just before I was 10 centimeters dilated, when all this epidural drama was going on, Pratik had said yes to the epidural team, and so before they can actually do the epidural, which is at the back in your spine, they have to give you a cannula, it's called, which is like a drip thing, so that they have to keep you hydrated and give you fluid. So for that they have to insert a pipe here, and so they had actually managed to do this. So I had this pipe attached to my hand. I didn't feel a thing because this contraction pain was so bad at that time that I didn't feel anything over here, and I had an IV drip going through. And they just managed to do that when I apparently screamed that something's coming, I have an urge to push. And that's when the midwife did another check and she said I was 10 centimeters dilated. So from then on, it was a crazy half an hour or so, because basically my legs were put up like this, and I had to deliver at that point. So the midwife said, okay, this is it. Your baby's gonna come any moment now. And I remember this urge to just push, and there's nothing I could do about it. And the midwife was saying, only push when I ask you to push, and when I tell you not to push, stop pushing. I was like, that's gonna be really difficult, but let's just see how it goes. So anyway, I had this urge to push, and suddenly I was like, okay, something's coming, just, I think the baby's coming. But it wasn't the baby, it was my waters. They had broken, and there was like a splash, and everything just came out. And then from then on, basically every time there was a contraction, I was asked to push. And that took me a while to practice, because I had up to that point been doing my hypnobirthing, which is like, you know, taking a deep breath and then just with my mouth I would just breathe out. But when it comes to pushing your baby out, instead of breathing up from your mouth, you actually channel your breathing downwards as if you have to do a massive poo. That's basically how I was explained it. So I was trying to do that, but guys, it was so painful and it was so difficult, and to me it felt like forever, but it was literally the half hour. So every contraction I was asked to push downwards, and bit by bit the baby was moving. I didn't feel it, but apparently the baby was moving. I would just listen to what the midwife would say and just try and do what she was asking me to do. And every time she would say, okay, when you get a contraction, push, I would try and push. It took me a while, but then I was like literally using every little ounce of energy I had in my body to push this baby out, because I just wanted her out and I just wanted to, you know, get this over and done with. It was really a very painful experience at that point. The only painkiller I had was gas and air, and literally I was like gulping it like anything, but it does dry you out, and it's not very, I would say, nice, is it, to have something in your mouth the whole time. So after a lot of pushes, suddenly someone said, oh, I can see the head. And from that point to when the baby came out, again felt like an eternity. I was like, this is not coming out, I can't do this anymore. I would literally fall asleep between my contractions. That's how exhausted I was. So a contraction would come, I would push as much as I could, the contraction would go away, and I'd just fall back into sleep. eventually my mum was like, oh, I can see the baby's hair. Oh wow, she's got a lot of hair. So it's like, okay, great, we are making some progress. I just need to push. So I kept doing that. And at some point, I just felt a release, a big release, and something just slid out of my body and the baby was out. Just, yeah, I just felt like a big relief when that happened. Baby slid out. Immediately the midwife picked her up, cleaned her a little bit, pulled up my gown and put her to my chest for some skin to skin time. I was so exhausted that I couldn't really like look down properly. I could hear a cry, and there I was just holding my little baby in my arms. It was a moment that I will never forget. I remember I couldn't look downwards that much, but I do remember looking towards Pratik and I saw him crying when that happened. And then eventually I was able to look down, and there she was, this tiny little blue, she was slightly blue as well because of, I guess, all the pressure of coming out. And it was just, I was like, wow, I did it. At that point I was like, great, my contractions just had magically stopped. I was like, it's done, she's here. And again, from that point on, things are a little bit blurry. So I remember that moment really clearly, and then again it kind of gets blurry where they took the baby away to clean her up and to weigh her and everything, and you would think that things have, you know, finished at that point, but no. My legs were still up in the air, and then at that point they checked me for tears and stuff. So luckily there were no major tears. There were a couple of tears which needed to be stitched up, but before they did that, you still have to deliver your placenta. This is something no one tells you before you get pregnant, but you deliver the baby, you go through all of that, and then there's a second round of contractions for you to deliver your placenta. It's a pretty massive thing that's been providing all the nutrition to your baby all throughout the pregnancy. So that was delivered. At that point I was like, okay, fine, it's now over, I can relax. But no, I had to have stitches down there. So yeah, that was again a very painful experience. I was literally crying, like I was crying, proper crying at this point, because I just wanted all of this to get over so I could put my legs down and just rest. Anyway, so I think it took about an hour and a half for all of that to be finished up before they said, fine, now you can properly relax. So at that point, finally I went and had my first wee, I had my first shower, I came back and I promptly fell asleep. I was literally so exhausted that I just completely fell asleep, and I only woke up when they woke me up because I had to breastfeed the baby, and that's when I properly saw Myra. That's my birthing story. It's an incredible experience giving birth to someone. I have so much respect for every woman who's given birth, because no one else can understand what you go through at that point. I mean, my mom was there, Pratik was there, they both saw it, but you know, no one else goes through what you go through. So I guess I just want to finish up by saying this is just my personal story. It's just, you know, one person's story. So don't assume that if you are going to give birth anytime soon that you'll have a similar story, but just know that everyone has a different experience. This was just mine. I'm just so happy that the baby was fine and that I was fine. And it's been 2 weeks already, so time just flies. And at that point I remember saying, I'm never gonna have a second baby again, like ever. And once you were home and I was playing with Myra, I was like, it'll be nice to have another baby. So I guess you do forget these, you know, painful memories and only remember the happy ones. So that's it, guys. This is going to be a super long video. I hope you've enjoyed my birthing story, and if you've got any other questions, just leave me a comment down below, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!